Anyone can become a speaker. It's not a talent you're born with. It's not a privilege you're born into. It's a skill that you can develop. Just because anyone can become a speaker doesn't mean that everyone is going to make it. This is a tough journey that you're picking, and you have to be prepared for what you're going to face along this journey. Anyone can become a speaker if they have dedication, resilience, and if I'm honest, a little bit of luck. My speaking journey was sparked by 3 events in 2015. In June, I graduated from university. In July, I lost my dad to cancer. And by August, I was dating the woman who would ultimately become my wife. These 3 events were all a call to adulthood. It was a call to say, who do I want to be and how do I want to live my life from this point forward? And after these events, I was on a search. I was trying to find out who did I want to be and what did I want to do? And as I'm sure you've done in your life as well, when you're searching for answers, you go to the internet. You try and find something out there in the vast world database that's going to help you to get through this problem and find those answers. In my internet searches, I came across a man called Brendan Bouchard. He was talking about how you become the person you want to be and how you have an impact on the lives of others, and that message really resonated with me. And in particular, I started to really connect with Brendan when I found out that he too had lost his dad to cancer at a young age. There was something about him that I thought might have the answers I was looking for. So I invested $2,000 in a ticket to one of his events called Experts Academy. I travelled across the world from my home country of Scotland to California in the United States. 27 hours on 4 different planes, but I got there. And as I was travelling, I felt like I was on some kind of pilgrimage. It was almost like a spiritual journey. And that out there in California was my personal Mecca. That was where I was going to find the answers that I was seeking. Over the 4 days of that event, Brendan absolutely changed my life. On the last day, I was sitting in my seat in floods of tears. And I wasn't the only one crying either in a room of 1,800 people. I just couldn't believe how much someone standing on a stage and speaking could impact me. And I realized that if Brendan could do that for me, maybe I could do that for someone else. Maybe I could stand on stage and inspire someone and change someone the way that Brendan had inspired and changed me. I realized sitting there in that chair, I'd found my answer. My purpose, the answer that I had been looking for, was that the person I wanted to be and the impact I wanted to have was through becoming a speaker. What I'm going to share with you today are 3 things that I learned from making that decision. When I flew back from the States here to the UK, how did I start that journey of becoming a speaker? Yes, I'd made that decision that I'm going to become a speaker. What did that look like? And I've got 3 tips that I learned from that initial year of trying to make it as a speaker. And the first tip that I want to share with you is don't be scared to start small. Don't be scared to start small. I began by finding any venue that I could to hire out and try and run some events and some workshops. The first workshop that I ran was in a classroom in my old university. I booked it out for a couple of hours on a Friday night, ran a workshop for 15 people. Half of whom were my friends who had twisted their arm into coming along and giving me some kind of an audience. The next place that I hired was a pub basement, a bar. And this basement, it didn't even have a door in the stairwell. So all of the noise and the music and the talk and the chatter from above was seeping in down into the basement as I was trying to run a workshop for 4 people I'd managed to get along that evening. So I realized the pub basement wasn't going to work. I was speaking to the owner of a coffee shop that I used to go into on a regular basis, and they had a second story in their coffee shop. And they said, oh, we're thinking of hiring out the upstairs space for anyone who wants to run events like networking and that kind of thing. I said, oh, would I be able to hire that out for doing some workshops? And if so, like, what's the deal? How does it work? Basically, they said, after we shut at 7:30, if you pay us £10 an hour to keep the lights on, then you can have that upstairs space and you can have someone, a staff member down below, serving teas and coffees. And all we ask is that anyone you invite, ask them to buy a tea and coffee. So that's what I did. I started using that upstairs space. And again, the numbers weren't big. The first workshop that I ran in this new venue, this personal venue, we had our dedicated staff, our hospitality team. First audience, 3 people. But that didn't matter. I was getting in the game and I was learning things. Yes, it might have been a drafty classroom in the back of a university building. Yes, it might have been a noisy pub basement. Yes, it might have been a reasonably comfortable and plush coffee shop space, but a coffee shop wasn't ideal for running workshops. I didn't have audio-visual equipment. I didn't have all of the things that you might want for running a live event. But it didn't matter. I started small and I started learning who I was as a speaker, what I wanted to speak about, and what people wanted to hear. And that's my recommendation for you. Don't be scared to start off small. It doesn't matter if you're filming videos that nobody watches. It doesn't matter if you're running webinars that hardly anyone attends. It doesn't matter if you're running events in pretty dank, dark, not especially nice locations. It does not matter. Don't be afraid to start small, because anything big comes from small beginnings. The second important lesson I want to share with you is that it only takes one opportunity. Only takes one opportunity. At Experts Academy, I was inspired to write a book about the experience of losing my dad to cancer. When I lost Dad, I was actually there on the final day with him. I was there in the final hour with him. And that was a hugely important and significant experience in my life, that I got to be there at the end. And so I wrote a book called The Last 60 Minutes, all about those last 60 minutes that I spent with Dad and what I'd learned and how I'd changed as a result of that experience. The book came out at the start of 2017, and it actually performed better than I could have expected. I had international readers, I had messages from readers in Australia and Belgium and the States. I was invited onto BBC Radio to share the book and talk about the story. It blew up in a way that I hadn't anticipated. But actually, when the book came out, I really wasn't in a good place. I was really struggling. I'd followed the bullshit hustle porn advice that in order to follow your dream, you have to go all in. And so I'd quit my job and I was just trying to make this speaking thing work. And I didn't have a clue what I was doing. I'd burnt through my savings. I had no money. My mum was giving me money to pay the rent. My partner, my now wife, was buying me food. I was in an awful place. I didn't feel like I was motivating anyone. Here I was and I couldn't even sustain myself. So I wasn't in a good place when the book came out, and I really wasn't finding very much traction with my speaking. I was still in the coffee shop at this time. That was my whole existence as a speaker, was running these little coffee shop workshops. Someone that I'd met posted on Facebook that they were running a charity event and they were looking for speakers. The charity was for the endangered white tiger. And whilst I didn't, I had no expertise on tigers or conservation or anything like that, I was so desperate for a speaking gig that I said, hey, I'm happy to be a speaker. And I got picked. I got picked out of, I think there was 8 of us all together. There was 8 speakers. It was a multi-speaker event, this whole day event, and tickets were being sold just to raise money for this charity, for saving the endangered tigers. I had a 20-minute slot and I just told my story. I told the story of the last 60 minutes of that last hour that I spent with my dad and some of the lessons that I'd learned and some of the changes that I'd made as a result of that. There was about 50 people in the audience. It was the biggest gig that I'd done up until that point. So already, that was something good. I was growing and progressing in that respect. Someone came up to me at the end and said, I really liked that story and I really resonated with a lot of things that you've got to say. Would you like to come and speak in front of my audience and tell them the same story? That was another gig that I got, another gig in front of 50 people. Someone else said, we run a group every month where we're looking for speakers. Would you like to be one of the speakers? Again, that was another 3 gig that I got. That was about 75, 80 people I spoke in front of. Another person approached me and they offered a paid speaking gig. I got first class travel. I got £250 for a 30-minute talk. That blew my mind. And all of that came from that one opportunity. If I'd said, I don't know how what I'm saying could be relevant to tigers and raising money, if I hadn't put my name in the hat, I wouldn't have been one of the speakers that day. I wouldn't have gotten those follow-up gigs. And that's where I started to get my name out there. That's why I started to get more exposure with these gigs that came off the back of that one single talk. And that's all that you need. Remember I said earlier, sometimes you need a little bit of luck? That was my little bit of luck. I had no reason to be picked as a speaker for that particular event. I had no expertise. I had no magic quality that said, I'm the right speaker for this event, but someone picked me regardless. And that was the one opportunity I needed to start gaining some traction and some momentum as a speaker. And it'll be the same for you. There will be that one talk, that one opportunity. One school asks you to come in to speak to their pupils. One manager asks you to come to speak to their team. You have one charity event where there's someone in that audience who has a much larger audience and a much more prosperous audience in terms of the money that you can make from it. There'll be that one opportunity, and that's all you need. And if you haven't had it yet, don't despair. Don't worry. It's out there, it's coming, and you've got to keep putting yourself out there until you get that one opportunity, and that is going to get the ball rolling for you. I'm going to come back to my story and the final lesson I want to share with you today in just a moment. Before I do that, let me tell you about my new book, now a #1 Amazon bestseller, Rise and Inspire. Find your voice, tell your story, and share your message as a speaker. If you're looking to get out there and take your own journey as a speaker, this is your beginner's manual. This is going to teach you everything that you need to know in order to build that foundation and get your message out there, to start becoming a recognized speaker. You've heard my origin story. They're nothing special, they're nothing grand. I'm now at a stage where I've run multi-day events, I've done UK-wide book tours, I'm a 3-time national public speaking champion. I'm in a very different place of my speaking to the story that I've been sharing with you in this video so far. And along that journey, I've learned things that have helped me to get into that position, and I'm sharing those with you in this book. The book is available right now on Amazon. Well, of course it would have to be to be a #1 bestseller. The ebook, paperback, and audiobook are all there for you. So whatever your preferred medium, it's there for you. This is a great resource for you to get started as a speaker. I wrote this book because when I was starting my journey as a speaker, the journey that I'm telling you about just now, I didn't have this. There was none of these resources out there. There were speaking coaches who were charging thousands of pounds for their programs and their courses and their coaching, and I just couldn't afford that at the time. I was looking for something that could meet me where I was at that moment, and that's why I've written this book. This book is a starter manual. It's not going to break the bank, but it's going to teach you so much to help you start getting some stuff in the bank. Click the link in the video description below. Ebook, paperback, audiobook, it's all there for you. Now, let's get back to my story, and I'm going to share that third tip with you today. Tip number 3 for you today is be a phrase. Be a phrase. What does that even mean? As I started to get more established in myself and ultimately in the community and with an established audience, I started to really refine who I was, what I was speaking about, and who I was speaking for. This ultimately led to my first brand, Author Your Life. I was across in Edinburgh for a networking event. Now bear in mind, I don't even live in Edinburgh. I'd taken an hour's train journey from my home city of Glasgow across to Edinburgh. And I was at a networking event there. It was being run by one of my mentors who I'd met along the way. And basically, she was the only person that I knew there. And I wanted to try and meet some new people. And ultimately, I wanted to come and support her with a new project that she was doing. So I go into this networking event. And I meet the one person that I know, I meet my mentor, and she introduces me to a couple people. And then I'm just doing the circuits, as you often do in networking, moving from one group to the other, meeting someone at the snacks or at the drinks table. And so this is exactly what happens. I'm at the snacks table, grabbing some nuts, grabbing some chocolate, and this lady comes up to me and says, "Hey, you're David McRae, aren't you?" Yes, good start. "You're the Author Your Life guy." The Author Your Life guy. That's what I mean by be a phrase. I had worked on making sure that all of my branding was centered around this phrase. At this point, I'd written my follow-up book to the last 60 minutes, Author Your Life, Become the Hero of Your Story. I had the Author Your Life podcast. All of my social media handles were at Author Your Life or some variation of that. My seminars and events that I ran were the Author Your Life seminars or the Author Your Life workshops. Eventually I had my 2-day event, the Author Your Life Summit. I didn't have that at this particular time though. But essentially all that I was doing was getting that phrase out into the world. Author Your Life. And so this lady in a city I didn't live in a group of people who I'd never met, had heard something about me, and she came up and recognized me as the Author Your Life guy. And she wanted to speak to me because some of my messaging around what Author Your Life was all about, being the hero of your own story, writing your own story in life, choosing who you want to be, what you want to do, what impact you want to have, all of that appealed to her. And she could take all of those concepts and package them up as Author Your Life and come up to a random guy at networking and say, "Hey, you're the Author Your Life guy and I want to find out more." And this is ultimately what you want to work towards as well. How can you be summed up in a phrase? And I know that might seem a little bit trivializing, saying, "Hey, look, I'm a lot more than just a soundbite. I'm a lot more than just a couple of buzzwords." Yes, you are, but you need the soundbite for people to be able to identify with the bigger stuff that you talk about. Be a phrase. When we're talking about getting exposure, when we're talking about getting recognized, when we're talking about getting established as a speaker, you've got to be a phrase. Because then people know what you are and what you're not, what you stand for and what you stand against. And that is so, so important. You've got to be nailed down on those specifics. If you try and be everything to everyone, you end up being nothing to no one. You've got to have that definition, because that definition, it might seem like it narrows your options. Actually, it expands them. So that's my third tip for you today. Be a phrase. I hope to have shown you throughout this journey that there is a lot of factors in play in terms of, are you going to become a successful speaker? You've got to start off small. You've got to start off unglamorous, getting your toe in the water and starting to find out more about who you are, what you want to speak about, and most importantly, who actually wants to listen to you. You've got to have a little bit of resilience along the way. The speaking journey is a tough one. There's a lot of challenges that's come up. There's a lot of failures that will come up. Things won't work out. You'll run events that will bomb. You'll have audiences that don't connect. You'll have times where you're wondering where your next gig is coming from, where your next paycheck is coming from. And sometimes you just need that little bit of luck along the way. But ultimately, as the saying goes, the harder I try, the luckier I get. You make your own luck as a speaker. And by putting yourself out there and remembering a few of these lessons, I'm sure that you have what it takes to be a speaker. As I said right at the beginning, anyone can become a speaker. And if you develop some of these qualities, if you remember some of these lessons, then I'm sure that you're going to make it as a speaker. And your voice, your story, and your message is going to be heard in the world.